Hi, this is Toni Burns.
And this is Scotte Burns with Journeys to Love.
Coming to you from the crooked little house in Deadwood, South Dakota.
We are.
You were mentioning something really odd.
I was using my imagination.
Oh, yay, because it's all about imagination on this episode.
Our theme is imagination this week, and I was imagining if we were on the road, what would it be like to come through Deadwood? So I started researching it the same way I would if we were just on the road coming through town. Roadside America, I pulled up Deadwood, and the first story that they ran was actually a travel story about the Buffalo Run running into a dead end in Deadwood.
A buffalo run?
Yeah. Picture Pamplona, Spain, the running of the bulls.
Oh, no.
Oh, yes.
Oh, no. They clearly don't know buffalo. They're stinkier and meaner.
Well, they'd
run you over and back up and run you over again.
Yeah, it was an idea that was briefly floated here in Deadwood several years ago. A fellow named John Boyer, who was an attorney representing a group called Running the Bison in Deadwood.
Okay.
Presented a plan to the commission to run buffalo as part of the Days of 76 parade through the streets of Deadwood. Well, the city and the city's insurance company collectively decided that probably wasn't as good an idea as it looked on paper.
Yeah.
If it should happen to come up again, I just wanted to point out to any interested parties, the original Pamplona running of the bulls wasn't done just for fun. It was the only way to get the bulls from the corrals to the bullfighting rings. They didn't have any other way to transport them. So
they let them chase people.
Yeah, well... See that guy in the suit? And the primary thing, though, that I wanted to point out is the number of injuries and fatalities during Pamplona usually don't happen during the bull run itself. And there's more than one of those. They only take about 3 minutes. Most of the injuries come during the week-long party that takes place around the featured event.
Exactly.
And since people are drinking sangria and many other things in downtown Deadwood during events, putting them out in the middle of the street with
buffalo
several one-ton behemoths.
Yeah, not a good idea. Not a good idea.
Yeah, just take your open container down to the stockade and have a seat. Maybe we'll show you some PBR on the big screen.
It's safer that
professional bull riding.
Yes,
which is
I know.
coming
We've
up here
got
in
that
Deadwood
coming.
as well. Speaking of coming up, we have some other things coming up in this episode.
Oh, yes, we do.
Including an interview with the Buddhist monks at the temple above Woodstock, New York.
Yes.
Showing their imagination when it comes to defining and describing love.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. And then speaking of imagination, we have someone whose entire life was dedicated to imagination and the wife that stood with him, Mr. and Mrs.
Fred Rogers.
Yes.
And our narrative for this week comes from that visit to the temple in Woodstock, and it's a story called Can You Imagine?
Of course I can. And I'm going to imagine us coming back in just a few minutes.
After this on
Love in America. So I have a quick question for you. What does America need more than anything else?
Love.
I'm going with that, too.
Love right out there in the open for everybody to see.
I like that.
Because that's the point at which Americans are going to learn to understand one another again.
Yes, that's the only way we're going to be able to bridge those gaps.
Right.
The blue and red, the stereotypes.
Destroying the stereotypes. You know the last time a friend or family said or thought something and you went, I don't understand that.
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah. But we didn't hate them. We wanted to know.
No, you start with, tell me.
Right. So we're going out across America to have America tell us, what is love? What does it mean? How do we find it with each other? And the best part about all this, you can help.
Awesome.
Go to our website, journeystolove.com, and click on the donate button. Help put Love in America on the road and spread the love.
I like love.
Whoa, when there's love in the air, you see people making faces like they just don't care, because love is simple, love is free, love is...
We're back all the way from New York.
Yes.
So we got the first chance to ride through the Hudson Valley from Poughkeepsie.
Poughkeepsie.
I just
love that name.
It's just one of those towns that's fun to say.
Poughkeepsie.
Yep. It's like Sheboygan.
Sheboygan.
It's got character all of its own. So we rode from Poughkeepsie up to Woodstock, New York, one of our favorite hippie hangouts after Boulder and Haight-Ashbury and Woodstock, and we've hit the trifecta. And we trekked up the hill to one of the more popular destinations there at Woodstock, which is the Karma Triyana Dharma Chakra. We just call it the Woodstock Temple.
The Woodstock Temple.
We were greeted by Grace O'Keefe, and she said she was an elementary teacher, and she's also a student at the temple.
She
made arrangements for us to meet with Karma. Here it is in his own voice.
My name is Kempo Karma Tenkyong.
That's a little different than the way we said it.
I think he's got all the inflections down better than I do. He
does, yeah.
We sat down and started asking some of our questions, and he came in partway into the first, little lighthearted. Why do some people not find love?
Some people go through their entire lives without ever finding a deep, devoted love, whether that's a love for another person, for what they do, for the place they're from. Why do you think that is?
Are you ready now?
So never ask that of a Buddhist monk, because he did have a very imaginative way of metaphorically describing everything.
When we were very small, we need something. When I got a problem, so I called to my mom, Hi, my mom, why? Why I didn't call other people? Why I didn't call something, Because I called to my mom because I know my mom will protect me. Why? Because there is the love.
There was no simple, easy answer, even though he would always say, simple, yes? And we're just nodding going, okay.
Well, it helps that we're asking some simple questions like, what happens to love after you die? Is there an afterlife for love?
Yeah, and that's a simple question.
It might require a metaphor.
So in the pure love, there is no need to we are thinking about the body. So body every day changing. It doesn't mean when we die, then finish. Not like that. When I was when baby, everybody love us, Oh, so cute. Then slowly we become young like this. People didn't say, oh, so cute. Nobody kiss us, Only your boyfriend, girlfriend love you. Then when we become old, then our children run away from our body, So that means our body is changing every moment to moment, so not permanent. Same like our mind also same thing. Love also like this. The body we can disappear, but our love is not like that, which is power is within us. It doesn't mean you are baby, it doesn't mean you are young, it doesn't mean you are old. Your love is within you. If you recognize, then it's becoming more powerful.
Then we threw one at him that's one of our regular questions, but we hadn't given him in the list. And he was pretty quick to respond to, what is love a choice? Is it something we choose to do, or is it something that just happens to us?
Love is not like something you have to cook for eating, not like that. Love is within you. You don't need to get love from someone. The problem is we didn't recognize the real love. So we make one fake love. So I think, I want to love from him, I want to love from her. That is our expectation to make something, But that is not real love. That is the picture of the love. So we want that. So that is the problem for everyone, But that is the attachment. That is not love. That's why people have many divorce because of they think the love. No, that is attachment with the love, not pure love.
So much of the conversation with him was rather involved. I mean, he would explain something, and then he would give you all these metaphors that go with it.
Well, he's a teacher.
He is a teacher. And in many ways, I kind of felt that he was teaching while we were asking these questions, because he was sitting up on the stairs to the temple. Grace and her friend Trish were just below that, and then we were below that. So everything was looking up to the gentleman, the monk, as he's
we
speaking.
were in a karma amphitheater.
We were in a karma amphitheater.
A great place to hear his answer for because when we're talking to couples, one of the observations we make and questions we ask is there are different eras in people's lives, in their relationships. You have the time when you're dating and the honeymoon stage, and when you're raising kids
and
different careers, when the empty nest period, there's these different eras that happen within a relationship and within a life too. So we asked him, how do you think love changes over the course of our lives?
Right.
How does it evolve?
Your love, when you practice, when you recognize, it's become more powerful with yourself, with your mom, with your friend, with your children, with your country. So that the changing is become more powerful, not like a body. Yes? If I really practice the pure love, it doesn't mean we are together or not. I really love you. And you have to feel it, you will get it. If you love the fact, then you need to close to each other and give something to each other. That is not real love. That is the one step how to go to deep love.
One last observation, a little lighter-hearted question. Then we want to know, what do you think is the greatest love song ever written? And this wasn't what I was expecting.
I love two songs. One is Michael Jackson song.
We Are the World.
We Are the World. I love that one. Then second one is I Love You More Than I Can Say.
Oh.
These two song is really, really beautiful.
And I'm glad that Grace said something about We Are the World, Michael Jackson.
I just want to see all the monks come out and do the Thriller thing.
He would do it. He had
would
a
have done it.
wonderful sense of humor.
They were tons of
oh
fun.
my gosh,
Yep.
they were awesome.
So if you are traveling through the Woodstock area,
Yes.
Hudson Valley, Poughkeepsie,
Poughkeepsie. It is definitely
make
worth
sure and stop by. The temple is well worth your time.
Definitely.
Absolutely
Definitely.
beautiful. And
Ask for Grace if she's there.
and a very welcoming place.
Very much so.
So we would welcome your hanging around for just a few minutes while we take a quick break, and we're going to be right back with Tony's Tale of Love from...
We're going to welcome you into the neighborhood. We all want to feel loved, right? Of course we do.
But we also want to feel needed.
Of course we do.
Well, your country needs you.
And it needs love.
It does. So we're heading out to find love in cultures, places, and events around the country. And here's the best part.
Oh, do tell.
You can help.
Oh, yay.
Well, I don't mean you. I mean them, you. So if you want to help spread love in America, help bridge the red and blue divide, destroy stereotypes,
Yay.
and have a pretty good time while you're out,
That's always the good part.
go to our website, journeystolove.com, and click on the donate button.
That's the donate button on journeystolove.com.
We want you to help spread love in America. I am home.
It's a beautiful day in this neighborhood, a beautiful day for a neighbor. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? It's a neighborly day in this beauty wood, a neighborly day for a beauty. Would you be mine? Could you be mine?
So many of you, whether you have kids or you were kids at one point yourself, may recognize that voice. And,
I did.
And may recognize that song. That was obviously Fred Rogers of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And imagination truly was a part of his life. It started very young, not necessarily in the most positive way.
Really?
Until he was 11 years old, he was an only child. Mm-hmm. And he was shy, he was kind of chubby, and he was bullied by other kids. kids.
There's a special karmic debt that
Yes.
that someone builds up from being the bully of Mr. Rogers.
Yes, no kidding.
My word.
No kidding. Well, I'm glad you said that, because a lot of kids, when that happens, it's how easy is it to become bitter and angry and whatnot. He said that what he would do is he would play alone in his room, basically, with his puppets, which was a good thing, because that
Got some practice for later
ended
on.
up carrying that in. But he also loved music. And he would say that when he would come home crying, he would cry alone, but then he said, I would cry through my fingers and make up songs on the piano.
Oh.
And did you know that all of the songs on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, he wrote?
He wrote. Uh-huh.
He wrote. He
Yep.
was brilliant. He could have grown up to be a victim or a bully, and instead he grew up wanting to help other kids get through difficult times in their lives. Because he was so soft-spoken, people often would think of Mr. Rogers as kind of a superficial and how sweet, and he was a very complex man. But that music led him actually to find his wife as well.
He was absolutely relentless in his purpose. He was
Yes.
He was very much mission driven throughout his life.
I'm going to talk more about his mission in life, because that was awesome. But I wanted to touch on how he met Joanne. And they actually met in college. One of the things that connected them to each other, obviously, was to be musical. You have to be imaginative. It's doing it by rote gives you very dry, empty songs and empty music.
She's a musician too, isn't she?
She is a concert pianist.
Right.
She is very much a musician. She had her master's in music. He had his bachelor's in musical composition.
Now that I didn't know.
I did not either. I loved learning all this cool stuff. So he was from Pennsylvania, but he went to Rollins College in Winter Park, Florida, and Joanne is from Florida, and that's where they met. They didn't really date as much as they kind of ran around in the same group together, but they enjoyed each other's company, and she said he was a marvelous dancer.
No kidding.
So they invited each other's sorority dances or fraternity dances. And they kind of kept in touch. But part of what attracted them to each other outside of imagination and love of music was their sense of humor. And even though it's soft and quiet, Mr. Rogers showed that sense of humor constantly through his shows. Like his puppet, King Friday the 13th, sings his version of Row, Row, Row Your Boat.
Merrily, 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 life is but a dream.
Very good. Now, the way we learned that at the Kingsley School was propel, propel, propel your craft gently down liquid solution. Ecstatically, 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 existence is but an illusion. Thank you very much.
So that's just a little piece of the very quiet and funny wit of Mr. Rogers. But after Joanne graduated, she moved to go to Florida State University and get her master's. Fred went the other direction. He went to New York because he had an apprenticeship at NBC. That's where his television career started.
Sense. Uh-huh.
And they kept in touch, usually letters, and Joanne said she didn't keep one of them because they were so boring and mundane. But Fred, despite his quiet nature, has always been full of surprises. So in one of the letters, he just said, "Will you marry me?"
Can you say flabbergasted?
I knew you could. So basically, she stopped what she was doing. She found a payphone and called him and said yes. So once she said yes, he went to Tallahassee because he wanted to give her the ring. I mean, you can't really do that. You don't want to slip it in the envelope with "Will you marry me?" So they drove around until they found a little church and the doors were open. So he went in and gave the ring to her.
Nice touch. And did they revisit the church later in life?
You know, they didn't say anything about whether or not they revisited
I would
the
think
church.
that would be one of those
I would
special
bet they
spots
did.
you
I would
return.
bet they did. But they did get married, obviously, in 1952. She ended up moving back to be with him. And NBC, after basically the reason he went from commercial television into public broadcasting is because commercial television's versions of children's shows were slapstick comedy, and they weren't, and selling products.
You're there to, I was just going to say, you're there to sell cereal. You're not there to...
Or Buster Brown shoes.
To cast a message.
Exactly. So he found that sort of love and life was in the public broadcasting. Right. Now, this is really interesting. Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood actually first aired in Canada, where he moved his family in 1963 as Mr. Rogers. Then in 1968, he went back to the studios where he did the Children's Corner, which was the original PBS children's show he did with another individual. And that's when it made its U.S. debut in 1968 as Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
Now, why Canada first?
Because they offered him a position and allowed him to create his own show. Right. He was just a participant in the Children's Corner. He created some of the puppets that he used in Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, but that gave him the opportunity to actually create and craft what eventually became the neighborhood. Right before they moved to Canada, he graduated from Pittsburgh Theological Seminary as an ordained minister.
I knew that he'd been ordained, but what denomination?
United Presbyterian Church.
Okay.
And the reason, and I thought of this when you said the mission, Rogers wasn't interested in preaching. He was one of those people that lives his faith through how he treats people, through his life, through what he does. So the abbot specifically charged him for his practice to continue working with children's television. So it truly was a mission for him in life. But he didn't do mindless antics. He didn't do slapstick comedy. And part of that made him revolutionary in that type of children's programming. But what really put him over the edge is that even though he was quiet and soft-spoken, he wasn't mindless. He didn't talk about the kids. He talked to the kids. He discussed things that he knew worried children: divorce, shootings, death of a family member, death of a pet. When Bobby Kennedy was shot, that night's episode had Daniel the Striped Tiger, which was one of his really shy. In fact, he said all of these puppets are based on personalities of myself.
I remember that, yeah.
But Daniel the Striped Tiger had asked on that episode what assassination means. Now, this show, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, was actually geared to 2 to 5-year-olds. So he understood at a very deep level that children have these fears. And some of them are like fears of haircuts, and he approached that. And some of them are fears of going to the dentist, and he approached that on the episodes. But some of them are fears of their parents not loving them and it being their fault because their parents are getting divorced.
Right. And kids that age are trying to put together some pretty complex issues, and you want to have a trusted voice that can fill those blanks in for them.
Absolutely. And not just middle-class white kids. That's the other part where he was very revolutionary. He took on racial stereotypes. One of my favorite episodes is when Officer Clemens, and Clemens actually was the gentleman's last name because Fred was real, and he was who he was in film is also who he was when you talk to him. Same voice, same mannerism. So the people that he had, the actors, so to speak, working with him, that's what he expected from them as well. Now, Officer Clemens wasn't really an officer in real life. He was an actor and a singer. But Clemens was his last name. He was African American. And there's a scene where Mr. Rogers has a baby pool, and he's filling it up with the hose because it's cooling him off. And he asks Officer Clemens to come in and join him. And then they sing a song together. But there's shots of both of their feet in the bathing pool. And this was at a time in the 70s where African Americans were actually being thrown out of white swimming pools. But he believed in, we talked about this before, love in action.
Right.
He had a wonderful quote that I love about imagination. That was, imagining something may be the first step in making it happen, but it takes the real time and real efforts of real people to learn things, make things, turn thoughts into deeds or visions into inventions.
He had creative input into everything on the show.
Yes.
He did all of his own puppeteering.
Puppeteering. I think it is puppeteering.
Puppeteering.
Puppeting.
wrote the music.
All of the songs.
Did the scripting. He had a hand in everything.
In everything. The sweaters he wore on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood were knitted by his mom.
I had heard that.
And he said he'd always seen her at one point or another in her life knitting a sweater for somebody. And one of them hangs in the Smithsonian.
As well it should.
Indeed. His trademark sneakers, he wore only because they were quieter than his dress shoes.
And she didn't knit those.
She did not knit the sneakers. Nope. And I did have to mention that, did you know an asteroid was named after him?
I did not know. What did they call it?
It was Mr. Rogers. Honest to goodness. Asteroid 26858 is called Mr. Rogers. And it was named after him by the International Astronomical Union at Carnegie Science Center in Pittsburgh.
Good for them.
But he was, who you saw is who you got. Because he said, putting on an act, kids know. Kids know when you're being real, and kids know when you're being pretend. And he said kids are not going to trust you if you're not being real with them. And they were very real people. They lived modestly. They drove used cars. They shopped at secondhand stores. And I don't mean when they first got started. I mean, this is how they were their entire lives. They lived near Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where the neighborhood was broadcast from, are you ready? 1968 to 2001.
That's a good
longest running program on PBS to date. They also had a summer home in Nantucket, which is a modest gray shake-shingled house known as the Crooked House.
Oh, good.
I so connected with them. So Fred was in mind, body, and spirit. Both him and Joanne were very much about love, about imagination, about music. And because of that, they walked the walk. Fred became a vegetarian at the age of 40 because he said he couldn't eat somebody's mother.
Aw.
He didn't drink. He didn't smoke. This is an interesting one. He swam in the Buff every day of his life.
I heard that. Yep.
But at places where you could do that.
Of course, yeah.
But apparently this is something from his college days where that was normal because the fraternity or the swimming groups he were in were all men, and it was not, that was part of the regiment, part of the exercise routine, and I guess he just got used to it. But he kept his weight at 143 pounds for most of his life, which he was delighted in. Do you know why?
I don't.
1, I, 4 words, love,
Aw.
3 words, you. And there were times on the Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood where he would say that. He would just say 1, 4, 3, and then he would go on about his merry way.
I'm going to use that one.
I love
Hope you don't mind, Fred.
Oh, I doubt. Fred was so open to people doing anything. When the whole thing about pirating came up, he encouraged people to record his programs because he thought the message was more important than the money.
Well, he gave testimony before Congress on recording technology for television based on that very point. What he was doing, he saw as having value, and it increases the value when people can watch it at times when ordinarily they wouldn't be able to.
Right. And that's what he said, is that, there are times the kids, the programs come on that he has no control over when the PBS stations are going to broadcast them, when the kids can't watch them. And he goes, and you would make them either stay up late or get up early, or you're denying them this.
I seem to remember Congress passing that resolution after he spoke.
So they lived a quiet, modest life, Fred being constant go-getter, Joanne teaching and playing piano when she could, which she gave up during the time that she raised their boys, and then started back in the concert pianist and the performance side after the boys were grown. They celebrated their golden wedding anniversary at the White House in 2002. That was the same day that Fred was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Now, this is the sad part. Less than a year later, Fred died from stomach cancer. His show went off the air purposefully. They'd stopped making episodes in 2001. The stomach cancer was sudden and unexpected. He wasn't diagnosed until December of 2002, underwent surgery in 2003, and then passed away on February 27th with Joanne by his side. But even at the very end, he wanted to prepare his children, which was everyone, not just the 2 they bore, for his death. At his behest, on the day he died, his website posted a link. to help children understand. Remember, it said, that feelings are natural and normal, and that happy times and sad times are part of everyone's life. Okay, I almost didn't get through that. I was getting choked up. But his legacy continues. Obviously,
Well, and through Joanne's work, because she's never stopped.
No.
And several of the people that have worked on his show have continued on.
Yeah. In fact, him and Joanne founded several organizations. The Fred M. Rogers Center for Early Learning and Children's Media. Joanne serves on that board. That's the organization that still promotes other children's programs. Joan also received in 2016, I just got to give a little kudos to her, the Great Friend of Children Award from the Children's Museum of Pittsburgh.
Beautiful.
So I want to leave you with a wonderful, it isn't a song. PBS did a remix of it, which is kind of fun, but it was his discussion, talking about the garden of your mind.
Do you ever imagine things? Are they scary things? Or things you'd like to have? Did you ever pretend about things like that before? Did you ever grow anything in a vegetable garden or a flower garden? Do you ever grow anything in the garden of your mind? Sure. You can grow ideas in your mind. You can think about things and make believe things, and that's like growing something of your own. You have wonderful ideas. All you have to do is think about them, and they'll grow. There are so many things to learn about in this world, and so many people who can help us learn. Isn't that wonderful?
He was a simple but complex man, and lived his life and lived what he loved through imagination and helping kids. Gosh, what an amazing thing.
And what a remarkable difference and way of showing the difference between having an open heart and inviting people in.
Yes. Yes, and Joanne and Fred invited everyone in.
Yep.
They were incredible.
And we're happy that you came to the door, guys. So
absolutely.
It is time for us to head to the door for just a few minutes. We're going to take a quick break, and we will be right back with our narrative and a tale called Can You Imagine?
I can.
Did you ever think of the many things you've learned to do? Many things you've Did you ever grow anything in the garden of your mind? You can grow ideas in the garden of your mind. It's good to be curious about many things. You can think about things and make believe. All you have to do is think, and they'll grow.
Tales from the Heart of America are produced by Scotte Toni Burns in the crooked little house of Deadwood, South Dakota.
And are part of the Love in America podcast.
Love in America and Tales from the Heart of America are distributed by PRX, the Public Radio Exchange.
Woohoo! We are in the big leagues.
Hey, baby. Can you imagine? A tale from the heart of America. Imagination is far too powerful a thing to simply let run wild, because it's the place where anything at all is possible. We all innately know this on some level, and that's likely for the best, as it keeps us from staring off into space, drooling a bit as we pilot endless flights of fancy. But there's also a measure of conditioned suppression of imagination that we're encouraged to indulge because we're supposed to believe that reality is one thing and imagination is quite another. Imagine that. I considered this as I told myself today that I just couldn't imagine more perfect days for writing than these last two. Yesterday, following 2 days of rain in Rhode Island, the sky lifted but remained steely and cool as we rumbled west into Connecticut. We were renewed as we rolled out of Zips, a welcoming and classic local diner in Killingly, Connecticut, complete with gum-chewing waitresses, jukeboxes on the walls, and the East's best bacon, cinnamon French toast, and coffee breakfast. As if in answer, the sun stirred the surface of the sky, playing puffy, dappled abstracts on the road ahead. Back in the saddle, with temps in the 70s and speed in the 50s, we kept the curves and hills of lower New England, lush greens of every hue, laying the background for ponds filled with fragrant water lilies, pastures dotted with fine horses and Swiss cattle, greenhouses and farm fields growing berries and neighbors. Bittyburgs through which we passed slept easy on a Saturday afternoon, their little gardens exploding with color beside the streets, the last in line always the grandest, a grand finale of floral pyrotechnics. Today, the idol was reborn. As we soared above the single-lane highways threading through the forests of New York's Hudson Valley, passing through more fertile orchards and farmlands on our journey to the fabled town of Woodstock. There, we were greeted with open, patchouli-scented arms for a wonderful street interview, and given directions to the beautiful Karma Triana Dhammachakra Tibetan Buddhist monastery, where Master Khenpo Karma Tenkyang laughed and talked with us for an hour about our work, the nature of and differences between love and attachment, and why Michael Jackson sang the greatest love song of all time. The day has ended with hippie salmon burgers in New Paltz and a sunset ride home after learning that tonight an aurora will be visible in the skies above the valley. In the life of Love in America, perfect. Of course, it wasn't actually perfect. A bit of sunscreen stung the corner of my eye for a minute. One roadside garden ended abruptly, bisected by an ugly trench to lay new sewer line, and a few houses sprouted old cars instead of white gables. Woodstock even had its share of made-in-China souvenir shops. Some fault can always be found with even the most wonderful reality. When we say, "I can't imagine this being any better," we understand the hyperbole, the exaggeration that says, "This is as good as it gets," while knowing that it can never be perfect. It's also curious how we accept the idea that perfection could be relatively better or worse. The fact is, we're capable of imagining anything at all, including perfection. But it remains a far more poetic and concise a thing to say, "I can't imagine a more perfect ride," than to qualify it with all that could possibly be better. In order to make a point, we artificially limit the bounds of our fancy, even if only verbally. The reverse of this belittling of our imaginations is also an instinctive human reaction to the dangers of its endless possibilities. When a terrible experience or situation befalls someone else, we often express how we could not imagine it. "I can't imagine what she must be going through." Admittedly, while we can certainly empathize with the shared experience of others, and we should, we simply are not the same people. We cannot know exactly how someone else feels. However, we could certainly combine memory, experience, and imagination to picture the terrible thing happening to us, which is precisely why we don't do it. We deny the possibility by telling ourselves we can't imagine it. We make similar statements when someone consciously screws up. "I can't imagine how he could do that." We intrinsically understand that imagination, given power, can eventually manifest reality. So, if we can't imagine the bad thing happening to us, the poor judgment being ours, it won't be. So why is it that we don't more readily use this to our benefit? Why not give positive things we desire their best chance to seed, to grow, to bear fruit, through saying, "I can imagine myself achieving anything, traveling anywhere, making myself anything at all. I can imagine myself loving and becoming who I was always meant to be." Instead, we too often keep our imaginations in the box, ignoring them, a self-directed prophecy of all the things that will never be given their chance to become real. "I can't imagine how I can get out of this job. I can't imagine how to make this marriage work. I can't imagine how my life could ever be different," and so on. But if we've already agreed that imagination is the place where anything is possible, Imagination given power can eventually manifest reality. And imagination is a part of us all. That means that love, success, happiness, and all the other things human beings want don't actually come from outside ourselves. We have them within us all the time. It's a hard thing to do because we've been led to believe that imagination is one thing and reality is quite another. Even though advances in science, the arts, invention, even mathematics show that imagination is where reality begins. If you doubt it, imagine not doubting and keep doing it. That's a start. For our part, I imagine tomorrow's road could be even better than today's. That there are friends we've not yet met, stories not yet told, and that a monk singing Michael Jackson to us isn't the end of wonders. Imagine.
So thanks for joining us this week for the Love in America podcast.
Love in America is produced by Scotte and Toni Burns in the Crooked Little House in Deadwood, South Dakota.
To learn more, visit our website, journeystolove.com.
Love in America and Tales from the Heart of America are distributed by PRX, the Public Radio Exchange.
And we are looking forward to sharing the love with you next time on
Love in America. Hey, there's more to that story.
There's always more to the story.